Good afternoon, dear colleagues and guests. Let me declare open this session of the Dissertation Council for the Defense of Thesis by Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich for the degree of Candidate of Political Science, Specialization 230004, Political Problems of International Relations, Global and Regional Development, on the theme Regional Peculiarities of the United Nations Food Security Policy. According to the order of St. Petersburg University, the 3rd of March 2020, number 1486/1, me, Vasileva Natalia Alexeyevna, Doctor of Philosophy, Professor of the World Politics Department of St. Petersburg University, was appointed Chairman of this Dissertation Council. Members of the Dissertation Council were appointed by the same order, and let me introduce them to you. In accordance with the order of St. Petersburg University of the 23rd of March 2020, number 2304/1, our meeting is being held in the remote access mode, which includes my colleagues, members of the Council, and the applicant. This same order appointed members of the Dissertation Council. Let me introduce them. Dobrin Ravin Nikolai Alexandrovich, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Professor of the Department of World Politics of St. Petersburg University. Can you hear us, Nikolai Alexandrovich? Yes, I can see and I can hear. Lagutina Maria Lvovna, Doctor of Political Science, Associate Professor of the Department of World Politics of St. Petersburg University. Can you hear us? Yes, all is well, thank you. Carefully, Igor Fedorovich, Doctor of Philosophy, Professor, Honored Worker of the High School of the Russian Federation, Director of the Center of Geopolitical Expertise at the Northwest Institute of Management, branch of the Russian Academy of National Economy and Public Administration, under the President of the Russian Federation. Can you see and can you hear us? Natalia Alexeyevna, yes, I can see and hear. It's good to see you smiling. Nurtazina Rosa Autalipana, Doctor of Political Science, Professor of Eurasian National University, named after Gumilov, Kazakhstan. Can you see? Can you hear us? Yes, I can see, I can hear all of you, and I'm happy to greet you. Also, the academic advisor there, Bakhturiza Zinab Zelimkhanovna, Doctor of Political Science, Professor of the High School of International Relations of Peter the Great Polytechnic University of St. Petersburg. Can you see? Can you hear us? Yes, dear colleagues, Natalia Alexeyevna, thank you. So, all the members of the Dissertation Council, as well as the degree applicant, are present, and we can all see and hear each other. Dear colleagues, since our meeting is being held in the remote access mode, in accordance with the St. Petersburg Order of the 23rd of March 2020, number 2304/1, I invite all the participants to follow the procedure closely. In case there's a technical failure and you stop seeing or hearing someone, please inform me. I will call a technical break until such issues are eliminated. If the connection with me is lost, I would like to ask Dobrin Ravin Nikolai Alexandrovich to call a technical break. And the connection with me is not restored to preside at the meeting. Nikolai Alexandrovich, do you agree? Yes, I certainly agree, but hopefully that will not happen. Yes, let's hope for that. Dear Council members, do you mind? No, we don't. Let's continue. To improve the quality of communication, dear colleagues, please switch off your microphones and switch them on. Let me also inform you that our meeting is being recorded and broadcast online at St. Petersburg University website. And the speeches are being simultaneously translated from Russian into English and from English into Russian. The applicant's page currently displays an email address to which anyone can send questions give their opinions and questions to the applicant online regarding his thesis and the ongoing scientific discussion. These questions shall be forwarded to me by our technical support department, and I will read them out during the discussion part. Questions should be related strictly to the applicant's speech and the content of his thesis, and must include full name, position, place of work, and or the author of the question. Questions that are not related to the scientific discussion, to the discussion of the thesis, to the text or evaluation of the thesis shall not be presented. In accordance with the internal regulations of St. Petersburg University, as a degree of candidate and doctor, in accordance with the local regulations or the order, a session of the Dissertation Council is duly constituted if at least 2/3 of the approved members of the Council are present, but not less than 4 persons. Our Dissertation Council consists of 5 members. All the 5 are present, all in the remote interactive mode. Audio-visual contact has been established with all of them. Thus, we have the quorum. I instruct the curator of today's defense officer of the Dissertation Council's Activity Support Department, Sazonova Ekaterina Vyacheslavovna, to draw up the attendance list in which the Dissertation Council members shall be recorded, and to indicate their work mode, in our case, remote mode. Let me set forth the procedure today's session of the Dissertation Council with the total duration of approximately 2 hours. First, the chairman's summary report on the main content of documents submitted by the applicant and their compliance with the applicable regulations. Answers to possible questions, approximately 5 minutes. A brief presentation by the degree applicant outlining the key points of his study, approximately 15 minutes. Questions to the applicant strictly on his report, no more than 2 minutes per question. 4. Answers of the applicant, maximum 5 minutes for all the questions. 5. Speeches of all members of the Dissertation Council in turn, with their opinions and speech of the opinions, suggestions to the degree applicant. No more than 10 minutes for each speaker. Speech of the chairman and a review, approximately 10 minutes. 7. Final answers of the degree applicant to questions, no more than 5 minutes. 8. Presentation by the chairman of questions to the applicant sent during the discussion, broadcasting a meeting of the Dissertation Council at the university website. 9. Answers of the applicant, no more than 2 minutes per question. 10. Speech of the academic advisor of the applicant, no more than 3 minutes. 11. Dissertation Council members' discussion of before the open voting of the results of the defense, during which the broadcast sound shall be switched off, approximately 5 minutes. 12. Open individual voting and counting the votes by the chairman. Results shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. 13. A decision on awarding or not awarding the academic degree to the applicant. 14. Closing remarks of the applicant, no more than 2 minutes. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions or objections to this procedure? If no one has any objections, let's start running the procedure, and please remember to switch off your mobile phones. Thank you for your understanding. So, I shall now begin the meeting. Let me give the floor to the academic advisor, Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich, Doctor of Political Science, Professor of the High School of International Relations of Peter the Great Polytechnic University. Bakturidze Zainab Zelimkhanovna. Thank you, Natalia Alexeyevna. Dear Dissertation Council members, let me introduce the applicant, Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich, who worked at his thesis during 3 years at St. Petersburg Polytechnic University, and at the moment is ready to present the results of his careful work. The theme of his thesis, Regional Peculiarities of UN Food Security Policy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Zainab Zelimkhanovna, for introducing Nikita Sergeevich. You will have the floor again after the speech of the degree applicant and speeches of the Dissertation Council members. Thank you. Okay, now let me outline documents submitted. The thesis by Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich for the degree of candidate of political science, scientific specialization 230004, political problems of international relations, global and regional development, on the theme regional peculiarities of the United Nations Food Security Policy, was accepted for defense by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University of the 3rd of March 2020, number 1485/1. Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich wrote his thesis at the St. Petersburg Polytechnic University of Peter the Great. The academic advisor of Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich is Doctor of Political Science, Professor of the High School of International Relations of St. Petersburg Polytechnic University of Peter the Great, Bakturidze Zainab Zelimkhanovna. The number of publications by the degree applicant outlining the main scientific results of his thesis, according to the enclosed list, is 7. In peer-reviewed scientific journals from the list approved by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation, 4 publications. In journals indexed in the Web of Science and Scopus scientific databases, no publications. The applicant submitted to the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University a full package of documents for acceptance of his thesis for consideration and defense. All the documents comply with Article 12 of Section 3 of the order. All the documents submitted by the applicant, according to the information I received from the curator, comply with the requirements and are currently kept in the applicant's attestation file. Copies are available from the Office of the Dissertation Council Support Department. Curator of today's session, Sazonova Ekaterina Vyacheslaevna, who's currently in touch with us. Before I give the floor to the applicant, let me ask you, do you, the Dissertation Council members, have any general questions to the applicant, including whether it's necessary to disclose and review the entire list of documents submitted by the applicant? I see there are no questions. Thus, let us give the floor to Nikita Sergeevich. Welcome. Good afternoon, dear Chairman, dear Dissertation Council members. Let me present my thesis, Regional Peculiarities of United Nations Food Security Policy. In the first quarter of the 21st century, much attention is paid examining and finding solutions to the global challenges the world community is facing. After summarizing the global targets set at the Millennium Summit in year 2000, UN member states made new commitments until 2030, in particular to address hunger. As noted in the FAO documents, food and agriculture are crucial to achieving the sustainable development goals by 2030, especially in ending hunger and poverty, transforming food systems that bring all people on Earth together, maintaining peace ecosystems and conserving the natural resources, combating climate change and its impacts, and building inclusive, equitable, and peaceful societies. Thus, in 2019, 821 million people in the world experienced hunger. Looking at the food problem, it's important to note its complex nature, which is determined by its close relations with many other global issues. such as environment protection, education, global health, etc. The special role in addressing the food problem and its various aspects played by United Nations, especially the Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, was specially created to address hunger in different regions of the world. Under the current conditions of scientific and technical progress and democratic transformation of the world order, there's a real opportunity to solve the global food problem through joint efforts at all international actors. According to the Millennium Development Goals program, was planned to halve the level of hunger by 2015. Unfortunately, it was not possible to reach such a level, but it became clear that joint efforts led by the UN can lead to practical implementation of the programs to provide food to the world's multi-billion population. In recent years, the concept of food security has come to the foreground in scientific research, the main points of which were formulated back in the mid-20th century. Agenda 2030 calls for a comprehensive approach to eradicating hunger, achieving food security, improving nutrition, and promoting sustainable agriculture. It thus defines all the four dimensions of the food security: availability, accessibility, utilization, and stability, and provision of food to the population. One of the peculiarities of the modern world political processes on global development is the existence of a regional approach to measures to ensure food security in the UN system. In recent years, the UN has focused on providing assistance to individual regions and countries as the global dimension of the food security has evolved from the regional dimensions. The food problem in particular is particularly acute in a group of developing countries where almost half of the working age population is employed in agriculture, but the lack of mechanization and agriculture leads to poor food security outcomes, which means that developing countries are constantly dependent on the external food assistance. Separately, it's worth mentioning the post-Soviet region, where the gap in political, social, and economic ties between the former US republics has led to a dramatic decline in the living standards, exacerbated the food problem. Therefore, a special program for humanitarian assistance to the population and modernization of the agricultural sector of the economy has been developed. For example, FAO has committed to monitor food security and nutrition trends, in particular at the regional and national levels, working with its partners in the framework of Agenda 2030. In this regard, it's important to explore this regional approach of FAO and other UN organizations and programs. This is the example of the states of the South Caucasian region. Thus, the relevance of my study stems from the need to increase the expert community's attention to the UN food security policies and the prospects for the regional approach to addressing the challenges of Agenda 2030. The current situation threatens to worsen. The World UN Food Programme notes that the number of hungry people around the world could increase dramatically by the end of 2020. According to the UN officials, the current coronavirus pandemic could also have a negative impact on the food problem. This factor has had an impact on the agricultural production, food logistics, and labor migration, the material condition of the population, and depleted financial resources of states and organizations. FAO is currently working on both analysis and recommendations to mitigate the effects of the crisis and ways to prevent its spread and limit its impact on the future of the world food security. The regional coordination is particularly important in order to respond to emerging challenges in a more comprehensive manner. The subject of these theses is the global food problem. The subject of this study is the activities of the United Nations organization aimed at solving the global food problem. The purpose of this thesis is to define peculiarities of the food security policy of the UN and the UN family organizations in the regional dimension, the theoretical and methodological basis of the study, The integrated approach to the study of the phenomenon, the global food problem, has become the theoretical basis for the thesis, which is due to the interdisciplinary nature of the problem. The institutional approach has defined the main theoretical parameters, the consideration of policies as specialized organizations of the UN family in the field of food security. The historical approach allowed to understand the evolution of the conceptual context of the term food security. So also methodologically, it was important to apply the systematic analysis, which allowed to characterize the problem of food security in a comprehensive manner in the context of modern global development. The method of structural and functional analysis helped to determine the place and role of FAO and related units in the structure of UN. Method and comparisons analysis was useful in identifying the common features and characteristics of the program policy of specialized organizations of UN family to address the food problem in different regions of the world. Scientific provisions to be defended. First, the problem of global decline and depletion of the agricultural resource base against the backdrop of a constantly growing world population requires integrated, multidisciplinary scientific research. The SDG Program 2030 provides the necessary guidance for the UN and its specialized organizations and programs to develop food security policies at both regional and national levels. Second, the establishment EU institutional units such as FAO, WFP, WHO, etc., has yielded positive practical results in reducing global hunger. However, the issue of global reduction and depletion of agricultural resources, which requires comprehensive multidisciplinary research on food security, both at global and regional levels. Third goal of ensuring food security consists not only in the production of sufficient food in limited conditions, but also of the government policy on a number of other areas, social, energy, environmental, and other aspects of domestic and foreign policy. Fourth, food sufficiency and the ability to produce food on its own is a defining characteristic of the modern state potential. Lack of adequate level of food supply to the population with domestic foodstuff may lead to dependence of imports and call into question sovereignty of the state. 5. The key role in solving the global food problem is played by the UN specialized agency, the Food and Agriculture Organization. The effectiveness of FAO depends directly on collaboration with other UN institutions through a system conducts food diplomacy both with NGOs and MNCs and with government actors. This provides an opportunity to realize the organization's potential as negotiating platform for different actors, promote cooperation, and engage in interactive communication at all levels. 6. The program activities at different regions of the world are the most important tools of FAO through which it provides practical assistance in ensuring food security. FAO modern diplomacy includes not only classic fight against hunger, but also promotion of food nutrition, healthy lifestyle. On the example of independent states, the South Caucasus, the obvious pros and cons of UN food policy as a whole. The scientific novelty of the thesis depends on the following provisions. First, the author's assessment of different interpretations of the term food security. Second, the food problem is considered in a comprehensive way. Research focus has shifted from the traditional social economic aspect to the political dimension of food security, both at the global and regional levels. Third, the regional peculiarities of UN food security policies have been identified. Fourth, authors provides own assessment of as food diplomacy. As a result of the conducted study, with regional peculiarities of UN food security, following conclusions been made. Firstly, a comprehensive analysis of the conceptual evolution of the term food security in EU documents and scientific literature shows that food security is one of the most important categories of contemporary political science. The thesis justifies the fact that in the 21st century, global political stability largely depends on food security because it includes the fundamental human rights to healthy and fulfilling life. That's why FAO's research on indicators of moderate or severe food insecurity based on the regional public opinion monitoring method is so important. Secondly, a global policy dimension of food security in the context of human right to healthy and fulfilling life has been revealed. It's been proved that food security is not limited to food. In today's global economy, the production of fast food is becoming one of the leading food industries, which has a negative impact on human health. As a result, one of the important components of the food security of the state, providing the population with a healthy diet, is undermined, results in reducing working capacity and life expectancy. Third, summing up FAO program activities, programs and projects have been classified into a number of groups depending on the region of application, the target group of states in need, and programs and projects by target. This author's classification of FAO partners in food problem solving, substructures of FAO Investment Center, WFP, etc., specialized organizations of UN family, IFAD, UNICEF, and WHO. It's donor countries, EU, USA, Russian Federation, etc. The dissertation reveals both reasons for success of numerous FAO programs in different regions of the world and the reasons for effectiveness of some programs, which often depends on objective factors, for example, civil wars and ethnic conflicts, which make implementation of programs at any level difficult or even impossible. Fourth, FAO's food diplomacy, which is an important instrument in addressing complex food problems in developing countries, has been revealed. The democratic principles of negotiation process, the use of quiet diplomacy and grassroots level negotiation create the necessary preconditions in consensual solutions in food security issues. Fifth, a scale of correlation between food security and state sovereignty has been defined. The following positions substantiated. Firstly, the preservation and strengthening of sovereignty of the state in the international arena depends on stability of the economic system, development of agriculture, high level of welfare of the population aimed at the use of environment-friendly technical innovations in the agricultural sector. Second, the international political authority of the modern state largely depends on the export of food as a product of strategic purpose. Therefore, state dependent on it. As authors on the example countries of South Caucasus, some region is given. Six, the author's expert assessment of FAO food diplomacy on the example of countries of South Caucasian sub-region is given, but the example of FAO programs assist the newly dependent states of South Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and the thesis shows pros and cons of the food policy of the UN. A reasonable conclusion was made that sustainability of the food security system in the republics of South Caucasus cannot be achieved without the active assistance of UN specialized agencies, as well as relevant programs of our strategic partner, EU. Today, the region is one of the world's largest sources of agricultural biodiversity, which is particularly important for addressing global food problem. Separately, it should be noticed that a rivalry of geopolitical interests in the South Caucasus region of Russia and the EU, as well as the US, do not contribute to approach republics in general, which negatively affects the prospect of joint efforts of Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia addressing food security issues. The thesis reveals that all the three countries keep rich collections in national seed funds. The scientists are constantly working with selected types of wheat with good yield potential and resistance to pests, and therefore there's some hope for the development of a special FAO agricultural program for this region as a whole. Dear Chairman, dear members of the Dissertation Council, my presentation is finished. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Now, dear colleagues, your questions to the applicant. Let me remind you that questions should be related strictly to the presentation, which outlines the key points of the study, and the questions, the answers should not take more than 2 minutes. I have several questions. Nikita Sergeevich, I'm most interested in chapter 3 of your thesis, and my questions mostly related to chapter 3. Which study methods did you use to measure that пропадает звук in the Caucasus expert evaluation of food diplomacy? Which diplomat expert did you interview experts in your thesis, such as Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan? Also, which specific proposals for this region do you have? Next question. What modern scientific research works on Georgia, Armenia, studies by scientists from these countries? Food security have you used? Dear Rosa Autolipovna, thank you for your questions. Maybe because of poor connection, which methods I used for what? For scale of food security was in the EU program. Why especially for the Caucasus region? The food security scale. You say the scale of food security. Did you understand the question? Yes, I hope I did. To determine the food security scale, I used data provided by UN and its division FAO. I also used materials from scientific conferences on food security in the region of South Caucasus and Central Asia. Also, scientific articles from periodicals dedicated to this issue. I also used data on regional and country evaluation of food security of countries of South Caucasus, of other expert groups. And as for the question on specific recommendations for this region, I have to improve food security in these states. First, it may be a little naive, but it would be good if the geopolitical fight, struggle in South Caucasus region to stop, because as we can see, Russian Federation, US and EU, they all see this region as an important strategic area, mostly I beg your pardon, as a transport node, which will give access to South and Central Asia. And we end up in a situation where assistance from different actors sometimes is aimed at persuading the South Caucasian states and for different states in the South Caucasus, the relations with different actors get priority, as we can see in Georgia. We can see clearly the picture that well, they sympathize European Union and cooperation with and USA rather than Russia. So that's the first idea, my first proposal, to stop interfering humanitarian programs with political activities. And secondly, at the moment, one of the peculiarities of development of the agricultural sector of the Caucasus is the dependence on Russian Federation for input, and economically this also is a serious issue which prevents countries to achieve food security at a proper level. For the modern, and as for the question about the modern works and materials I use, in Article 3 of Chapter 3. These are data of organization OFR. These are articles by authors, mostly authors. Proposal. Scientific literature. This is data provided by United Nations and FAO, and data are used for evaluation of activities of strategic partners of FAO, EU, in the states, in the sphere of political regulation of this sphere, is in development of comprehensive state program for the state for a period of 4 years. And in the past 3 years, comprehensive state programs. 2016 for Georgia, for Armenia, it's strategy of sustainable agricultural development until 2025. So these are my answers to your questions. Thank you. Thank you for this question. Are you satisfied with the answers, Rosa Autalipina? Well, I am satisfied. Thank you. Do we have more questions? Who would like to ask? I have a question. I have it put in my review. I expected Nikita Sergeevich to touch upon this in his presentation, but this did not. Why did you choose the South? Why did you use South Caucasus for your study? What makes it special or interesting or strategic for you? Could you please explain that? I understand your questions. Maria Lvovna, thank you for your question. Indeed, this region is very interesting for me for geopolitical, historical factors from the point of production. As I said in my presentation, the states of the region have a rich collection of seeds, seed specimen, resistance to pests and with good yield potential. And as said in the FAO review book, by biodiversity gardens, flora and fauna that could be adapted to agriculture. Its unique features in the region, among other things, speaks of the importance of this particular region in the struggle against global food problem, the fall of USSR and processes that followed in the post-Soviet sphere, break of old political and economic ties between the states in the region is one of the reasons to pay attention and to study this region and to come back to historical factors, this activity of different actors in the region and its importance for world global logistics, not only for agricultural resources. And as I mentioned already, unique combination of production factors in agriculture, historical importance. So these are the factors which make this region interesting for study. Thank you for your question. Are you satisfied with the answer? Yes, thank you. Who else would like to ask something? I see no one has more questions. In that case, let us proceed. Let us hear the reviews of the council members with their assessment of the thesis and suggestions to the degree applicant and his external reviews, comments, and negative opinions. So that's what we shall do next. The applicant may answer each council member after each review is presented, or in the end, after all the reviews have been presented. I suggest, as the chairman, to answer each opponent after he presents his review. Do you agree? Yes, we do. I see there are no external reviews. So let's hear the speeches of the council members, since all the reviews have been published at the university website for reviewing. I suggest to read only the key points, questions and comments or remarks to the applicant. Hopefully that is okay with everybody. And let's hear the reviews of the council members. Let's start with a review of Dobronravin Nikolai Alexandrovich and questions sent during the session of the Dissertation Council. So far, we haven't received any external questions online. Ekaterina, do we have questions? No, at the moment we have no question. We received no questions. So let's hear the review of Nikolai Alexandrovich. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. And we can also see you. I will try to make the part of my review which is already familiar, the positive assessment of the thesis, because it's interesting, it's dedicated to a relevant problem connected with regional activities of the United Nations Organization in the sphere of food security. Goals and objectives seem well-grounded. In general, the work corresponds to novelty, relevance requirements. There's an obvious advantage is the comprehensive approach. Conclusions are certainly correspond to the content of the thesis. And after that, after all that, let me proceed to my small number of critical remarks. I have 8 remarks, and so hopefully I will not take too much. First of all, the literature overview, seems to be incomplete. Maybe the author deliberately used a number of studies on the problems of UN family as they were published by UN agencies. And this approach is grounded, but the author should have mentioned that. Sometimes in the Russian text there are stupid, very unfortunate mistakes, which I shall not mention, but they are obvious to all the council members. This is a technical issue. Next, 3. There are inaccuracies, probably connected with non-critical use of literature. For example, on page 116, peculiarities of Russia's position is also dictated by its geopolitical interests and influence role in the world politics despite preservation of the status of a developing state. I think the thesis, Russia doesn't have this status. 4, there are errors possibly due to inaccurate translation. For example, and I gave some examples in my review, more substantial. 5, considering cooperation of UN agencies with 3 states of South Caucasus, the author says FAO should take into account the current geopolitical peculiarities of the region, where several powerful players are competing for influence. Such a recommendation is interesting, but is still worth considering FAO as not as a political and military organization. So by definition, it cannot use this recommendation. 6, also substantial in my opinion, in my review and in the presentation. No mention is made of the regional peculiarities connected with the long existence of 3 unrecognized or partly recognized political entities, which are also in the part of the territory, regardless of their status as sovereign or political unrecognized political entities. So the question is not their status, but in the fact that UN has to deal with problems of the population. There are 7. What surprised me is the impact of anti-globalist, feminist and green movement on the UN food security work is poorly covered in the thesis. I found only one mention, and was called a nuance. I think maybe everybody can feel that the impact on UN activities, all these movements have a significant impact. And finally, among the conclusions already mentioned, there is one unsuccessful repetition connected with rich collections of the national seed banks. Though maybe this is true, unfortunately, in the thesis itself about such institutions, very little is said. So maybe the author should have said more about these institutions. All comments are recommendations and do not affect the significance of the study. And the thesis on the theme regional peculiarities of UN policy in the food security meet the basic requirements applied to the order of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University. And the degree applicant, Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich, deserves certainly to be awarded the degree of candidate of political sciences, the Speciality 230004, political problems of international, global and regional development, clause 11 of the above mentioned order of awarding academic degrees has not been violated by the author. Thank you. Nikita Sergeevich, will you please answer? Thank you. Nikolai Alexandrovich, for your review and for your questions. So Nikolai Alexandrovich, if I understood your question about inaccuracies connected with non-critical use attitude to literature, the example of Russia maintaining the status of a developing state, here I mean that there is a classification of developing states, and according to IMF, which is an EU institution, and other data such as so Russia is a developing state by a summary of criteria of developed, such as GDP, sectors of economy, the decreasing role of natural resources development, the social sphere, and according to all this, so Russia, in my opinion, according to my data, Russia can still be called a developing state with the market economy. The next, about your comment, number 5, the idea for FAO to take into consideration the geopolitical features of the region. Of course, the recommendation, interest, that FAO is not a political military organization. This is really so. But at the same time, I think that it should still follow this recommendation because the activity is connected with strategic resources such as food, and the activity connected with interaction with strategic resource will always be affected by external parties or also external stakeholders, programs that may reduce efficiency of FAO programs. Also, I think it's necessary to answer, I believe it's necessary to answer a comment about insufficient coverage of long existence of 3 recognized political entities in FAO, South Ossetia, Abkhazia, and Nagorno-Karabakh, considered as regions of Georgia. Is regions of Georgia. So if you access programs of assistance, agricultural sector, South Ossetia is Georgia, and Karabakh in FAO literature is referred to as part of Azerbaijan. And because of there's so much discussion about these territories, I decided not to single them out. Next, regarding your comment about aspects, movements and how they impact food security. I am grateful for this comment, and in the future I will develop this in my further research because this sphere is highly relevant today. Will be is very important. So thank you for, and I'm very grateful for your comments. Nikolai Alexandrovich, are you satisfied? Yes, I am. Thank you. Let's proceed to the next review. Lagutina Maria Lvovna, thank you. Natalia Alexeyevna, let me present my review to Nikita Sergeevich's thesis. First of all, it was rather interesting for me to read this thesis, which doesn't happen very often. The subject is interesting. I liked the approach, which today is quite popular, but in Russian it doesn't get attention. Interaction at two levels, regional, and it seems to me that this is definitely the contribution made by Nikita Sergeevich. Many questions deserve attention and maybe further study. And of course, the relevance of this study was mentioned by Nikita Sergeevich. Of course, today became even more obvious because of coronavirus pandemic. Population in many countries had issues. Fortunately, this didn't happen in Russia. There was a food crisis, lack of food, and insufficient food. That is so. This is something we experience currently, but unfortunately, if we talk about Russian literature, and I checked this myself, Russian experts, political scientists, do not pay attention to FAO and UN activities. I didn't find many works by political scientists dedicated to this, so which is another advantage of Nikita Sergeevich's work. And I started my speech by saying that interesting subjects the author touches upon connected with food safety, such as regional dimensions of global structures, interaction of global structures with regional state agencies in the sphere of food security, the issue of food quality, life quality, food sovereignty, food independence. And I think the result deserves attention, can be valuable for practitioners, so expert organizations. I'm absolutely sure of that. But though I have a very positive, I have some minor comments, actually 4, not as usual. My first comment is a little similar with the first comment made by Nikolai Alexandrovich. It's not about literature overview, but the source or document overview. Nikita Sergeevich says himself that is based on documentary sources, and at the same time he makes very few mention so he should have paid more attention to the documentary sources. Second, in the first paragraph of the first chapter, the author analyzes existing approaches to definition of food security, but mainly citing Russian sources. I was a little bit surprised because in the West, this topic is very popular, and it will be interesting to compare approaches and understanding of this term, of this concept, between Western and Russian scientists. It will be interesting to compare the approaches of developing countries. That's a suggestion. So I think that's a significant comment for me. Third, in the first paragraph of chapter 3, the author covers an interesting topic, the regional dimension of FAO, multiracial diplomacy, points out the beginning of the paragraph, the importance of interaction with regional structures, specialized institution, on page 92. But further in the text, he only mentions interaction with the European Union on page 104, 105. And if we mention the region of South Caucasus, the author should have looked at interaction with Eurasian Economic Union as CIS, regional structures of the region in which the countries in question are participating. And my fourth comment I've already given. There is no explanation in the text The author should have done so in the introduction, why he selected the region as a case study to analyze the regional peculiarities of FAO. Only on page 122, I found that the region is of interest as an example, but that's the only reason given in the text. So if you choose a particular case, when choosing a particular case, you should give a more detailed explanation of your choice. Yet, these comments don't reduce the overall positive impression of the thesis and by Nikita Sergeevich Ivannikov, and the thesis on regional peculiarities of UN food security corresponds to all the requirements set by the order in 2016 on the order of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University. And the degree applicant, Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich, deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of political sciences, Speciality 230004, clause 11 of the order, has not been violated by the author. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Nikita Sergeevich. Rosa Autalipovna is back. So we don't need a technical break. The sun was in my face. No, everybody is present. Okay. Maria Lvovna, thank you for giving such high opinions. So let me answer some of your comments. As for your fourth comment about the choice of region, I have already answered this question. As for little attention paid to foreign definitions of food security, indeed, while writing my thesis, I used literature in Russian and then in foreign languages. And because definitions of food security coincided with definitions used by foreign scientists, I did not include the definitions in my work, and I agree it was a mistake because I used studies. I should have mentioned in my thesis that the approaches used by Russian and international scientists are the same, and I agree with what you said with loss of interest. So I think this interest chronologically is somewhat. So most articles published by foreign authors on food security, most articles they were 1 or 2 years ahead of articles published by Russian scientists. I mean, what happened in 2014, 2015, and so I would like to mention this. As for your third comment about working with regional unions, I only considered European Union. I looked only at European Union because in this case, by scale of impact, as a key partner of FAO and cooperation with other regional structures, the matter is there is this problem in some regional structures that you mentioned. In some regional structures, not all the 3 states are present members. For example, either Armenia or Armenia and Azerbaijan, or Azerbaijan and Georgia. So there is no other. I couldn't find any other organizations where all the 3 states are members. And at that, I would like to thank you for your comments. Thank you very much. Thank you. Maria Lvovna, are you satisfied? Yes, I am. Thank you. Now, Igor Fedorovich Kefili, we'd like to hear your review. I'm on. Thank you for giving the floor to me, and I listened to the official reviews of official opponents and answers of the degree applicant. Oh, what's this noise? Oh, what's this noise? Everything is okay. Some echo I can hear. That I would like to join positive remarks given by my predecessors, by preceding reviewers, and to emphasize that indeed this subject is quite relevant and in demand, and we can experience ourselves what the information society actually is, which we expected, about which we wrote so much, and it all looked so well. And the pandemic demonstrated to us the dark side of the information society. And because of that, you get a different vision of Nikita Sergeevich's thesis connected with food security as one of the key elements in the chain of security challenges, global security issues. So it's not somewhere, doesn't come somewhere in the final position. So it's getting more and more important. And at least for me, it was more and more relevant. And the chapters of the thesis on methodology, the use of empirical material is quite successful, I already mentioned. And I, to answer the chairman's appeal, I would like to focus on some minor drawbacks, which I'd like to present as suggestions for future work. And this subject, this theme, has big potential for future research. And for example, if we talk about the first chapter, here the author follows the evolution of the food security concept from so it supports the level of providing food that ensures healthy food for state population. Now we are all in a situation that as we study texts by foreign authors, English-speaking authors, sometimes inaccurate translation. We run into may come across inaccurate translation. It's not quite clear by population of states. And second, the author takes a positive position, plan of action at the summit. The food security exists when all humans have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe and full nutrition. So with this, my suggestion is that the author should say that such statements on support in accessibility, not functionality of security, and the actor who should ensure that the phrase, this sentence sent by World Health Organization can be interpreted in different ways. But on page 59 of the thesis, such actor is the author calls the state such an actor, the state regulation of health eating habits model. So some vague explanation results in the positive solution. And speaking of the second chapter, in the second chapter, the author addresses global obstacles that have negative impacts on food security at the global level. And in chapter 3 has already been discussed by many opponents. And maybe Rosa Autalipovna will add something, add more critical remarks, because what was said about a particular region, peculiarities are very subtle, and at a global level, one can say very generalized level, but at the regional level, actual facts become very obvious and delicate formulas. So what the author says in chapter 3 is dedicated to regional issues of food security, and in my opinion, the author deals quite successfully with peculiarities of pressure exercised by EU on the states in this region of South Caucasus, Central Asia, maybe. So that would be, and on behalf of food provision, implementation of food programs, but to pursue their national interests, or US as well, does that as well. And in that case, the author points that on page 23, it's one of the regions of the former Soviet Union, former USSR, that the South Caucasus included in the sphere of geopolitical interests of the European Union and the United States, which do not contribute to a realization of the food security in the region, even though this subject, as I said in my review, was outside the scope of the author's research. But as my suggestion, this issue can be studied. The overall positive assessment of the thesis, I'd like to mention some other shortcomings in addition to those mentioned above. First, it seems reasonable and relevant to increase the number of methods used by the author to obtain a more versatile and complete analysis of the materials used. Of course, there's no limit to perfection in this case, but at least to point out the methods that can be used, but what has already been done. But the author should have said that the field is quite broad and calls for comprehensive politological nature, because food security is one thing, can be described as number of calories and availability of food, but what political decisions are being made what is the balance between these mechanisms on the regional and global or state levels. So that will be should be more obvious in the way. Second, some passages in of the thesis, in my opinion, are too descriptive. The author just gives us information without giving his opinion or attitude to the facts, and final conclusions sometimes do not reflect all the results, even though in his speech Nikita Sergeevich quite well described, maybe after receiving the remarks remarks by the opponents. So in his thesis, he took them into account. And so finally, my fifth comment is the text of the thesis contains a certain number of lexical errors, such as repetitions, grammatical and stylistic style mistakes. Let me give one example. Last chapter, conclusions, and the author says that in conclusions, global security ensures global political stability. As an editor, I have to look at many texts. The verb ensure comes not from security, but from word, not from glory. But I would like to finish on a positive note. The thesis by Nikita Sergeevich, Ivannikov, Regional Peculiarities of UN Food Security Policy, corresponds to the main requirements set by the order, the 1st of September 2016, on the order awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University. And the degree applicant, Ivannikov Nikita Sergeevich, deserves to be awarded the degree of Candidate of Political Sciences, Specialty 230004, Political Problems of International Politics and Global and Regional Development. Clause 11 has not been violated by the author. We all know what this clause 11 says. That's all. Thank you. Thank you. Nikita Sergeevich, please answer. Igor Fedorovich, thank you very much for your comments and suggestions, most important for my future work. I am going to continue this work, so I hope that on the basis of your suggestions and comments, my future work will improve. So I'm very grateful for your comments. Thank you for such a brief answer. Are you satisfied? Yes, I'm quite satisfied. Thank you. That's good. Okay, let us proceed. Rosa Autolipovna, your characteristics of the web, of the work. We can't hear you. Can you hear me now? Yes, we can. Thank you. The Natalia Alexeyevna for giving the floor to me. Of course, getting the text, it was very interesting for me to read the thesis, because our doctoral students, we have 2 students working on food security at the moment. Now, I absolutely agree with my colleague council members. Speaking of relevance, today every state realizes the importance of food programs, food security, which makes a part of the national security. And so I will not repeat. So I'd like to talk about my suggestions and recommendations, which only some I included in my review. First of all, the theme of the thesis is regional peculiarities of UN food security policy. Nikita Sergeevich defines the object of his study and the subject of his study, but I thought that the object shall be regional peculiarities, but then it was too general. So that's first. Second, and of course, as an editor of a scientific management scientific magazine, first of all, I notice stylistic and spelling errors. As an editor, colleagues were diplomatic, but for example, on pages 36, 37, 38, 39, on every page, there are spelling mistakes or repetitions. So such etc. So such phrases unacceptable in a scientific paper, especially for such a promising young scientist. Next, third, in the thesis would use statistical methods. I understand that we often take part in dissertation councils of international relations experts and the descriptive nature. So there is no SWOT analysis. The author could have conducted a survey of international experts, include graphical parts, and so there are many articles where there's no graphs, no tables, no figures, only text. You don't get the feeling of analysis conducted by the author. Of course, these are my recommendations as the chairman of the Dissertation Council on Political Science. So we take a very close look at that. Next, I'd like to say that to avoid repetition of food security programs, the author should pay attention to many other studies on this, articles and theses published since 2002, and there is a thesis in 2017. Here, I'd like to recommend this Scopus magazine, published in Sweden, each constantly on energy security, food security. This is a very science intense journal, and so if you know English well, you could. They are very interested in the issues of the Caucasus, or the Caucasus, South Caucasus. And finally, the conclusions after each paragraph consist of only one sentence, which is not scientific research, but more conclusions of a magazine article. And maybe I'm too critical here, but some paragraphs, the conclusions only take one sentence, which is unacceptable for the candidate's thesis. But in general, I think that these comments do not affect the significance and They are suggestions, so I focused on the main suggestions, and so these suggestions do not leave the. Also, I believe that the thesis has been tested in anti-plagiarism program as a scientific supervisor. So I assume that clause 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated by the author. In our university, we use our own software. So I hope you have your own regulations on that. And the thesis by Ivannikov, Nikita, Sergeevich, Regional Peculiarities of UN Food Security Policy, on theoretical level, this is key of policy, UN policy, as on vision objective for food security in the world. The thesis make a significant contribution to the development of political science and meets the basic requirements established by the order, the 1st of September 2016, 6821/1, on the order rewarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And the degree applicant Ivannikov Nikolai Sergeevich deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of political science, specialty 230004, political problems of international relations, global and regional development. Clause 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated by the author. So thank you. Thank you. Nikita Sergeevich, please. Dear Rosa Autalipovna, let me thank you for your detailed comments, especially for the part about using more methods. So this comment, which can be interpreted as suggestion, and so these are your comments are very specific. Thank you very much. And as for maybe reference, like so I should increase my reference. I should increase my number of instruments and pay more attention to issues connected with the author's opinion and results achieved by the author. Thank you for your comments and suggestions. I accept all of them. Thank you. Thank you. Are you satisfied? Yes, thank you. Okay, in that case, let me present my review. And here, as others present, as other council members, I'd like to say that the pandemic highlighted the issue of food security, and maybe because of that, the relevance of this study is beyond any doubt. And I also believe that the pandemic contributed, though it's sad, to growing interest of the scientific community in food availability, and it seems that this issue will become very serious in near future, and I know that the UN expert and FAO played a key role in this, but in recent years we see a growing critical attitude to UN and its specialized institutions, including FAO. So I hope that this organization will survive this criticism and will demonstrate good results in the efforts to reduce hunger, and the pandemic will not be as bad for the Earth's population. But let me get back to the thesis now. Indeed, the author has worked hard I think it's very important that, as was mentioned by Maria Lvovna, it combines regional and global factors. If we get back to UN, the impression by Maria Lvovna, great attention is paid to the regional approach within the UN, and that is why Nikita Sergeevich identified the trend correctly and studied the activities of FAO in the South Caucasus, of course. The Common Eager Federation, Rosa Otalipa already mentioned that UN and FAO see the region together with Central Asia, but maybe that will be, the material will be too big to study, and maybe in the future Nikita Sergeevich in his doctoral thesis, maybe he will address a bigger region. In general, I have a positive opinion. Speaking of comments, I'd like to present critical comments. First of all, on page 11, 13, the author presents provisions. The very wording of this paragraph is subject to discussion. Yet the number of provisions, especially provisions 1, 2, 3, and 5, are mere describe the current situation. So it's not clear what the author intends to challenge or change. Secondly, the semantic center of the thesis is the material of the third chapter, which was mentioned already, where the most interesting part is presented in the third paragraph, describing the situation with food security in South Caucasus. So it will be interesting to turn it into a chapter on issues of food security, not only in the Caucasus, but in the post-Soviet area in general, which for Russian research will be very highly relevant. We are very interested in the potential of our region. Third, the annexes could contain not only maps of hunger, and so it's good that Nikita Sergeevich, but also charts, tables, and diagrams, which would more clearly illustrate the regional pictures of addressing the issues of food security. But these remarks are of private and recommendatory nature, without reducing the overall positive opinion of the thesis. And in conclusion, I'd like to say that the thesis by Ivannikov, regional peculiarities of UN food security, corresponds to the main requirements set by the order, the 1st of September 2016, 6821/1, on the order of awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University. And the degree applicant, Ivannikov, deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of political science, Speciality 230004, political problems of international relations, global and regional development. Clause 11 of the order has not been violated by the author. Nikita Sergeevich, please answer if you have any questions. Natalia Alexeyevna, thank you very much for giving such a high opinion and for being interested in my work. I'd like to comment paragraph 3 of chapter 3, which you suggest to turn into I agree with this, with your opinion that for the Russian scientists and this subject, the study of post-Soviet space will be interesting, but as you correctly said, it's too long. It would be too long. So in the future, I am considering to other future fields for research, so that can be an interesting sphere for research. Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Thank you. I let me ask our curator, Ekaterina Sazonova, have you received any questions? No, at this point, we received no questions. In that case, let's hear the speech of the academic advisor, Nabzim Zlimkhanovna. Thank you, Natalia Alexeyevna, of the Dissertation Council. I apologize, I will not repeat what was already mentioned, like relevance, author's contribution, and novelty. I'd like to say that while working on his thesis, Nikita Sergeevich duly exhibited qualities necessary for a young researcher. He was persistent, he was able to clearly set goals and find the optimal ways to reach his goals, to analyze his results at every stage, every phase, to use theoretical instruments and to assess results of his work, to react to comments. And he worked hard to study. And because of that, I believe that the thesis is an original and independent study. It has theoretical and practical value, significance. I'd like to thank all the members of the Dissertation Council for their attention and for logical and good, and I invite you to support this work. Thank you. Thank you. Well, since we are working in the remote access mode, do Dissertation Council members and others present have, or maybe the applicant himself, have any unanswered questions related to working in remote access mode? If anyone has any such questions, please give them now. I see no one has any questions. Then, dear colleagues, we have an opportunity before voting to take a break to discuss the results, and the sound will be switched off. What do you think? Do we need such a break to discuss the results of defense? I see that we don't. In that case, let us proceed let's proceed to the voting. At that, the opinion of each member of the Dissertation Council shall be given independently and shall be given in public. Dear colleagues, since so can we all hear and can we all see each other? I think we can. I put the question of awarding to Ivannikov Sergeevich degree of candidate of political sciences, specialization 230004, political problems of international relations, global and regional development, to the open individual vote. Let me remind you that a decision of the Dissertation Council on awarding an academic degree shall be considered positive if more than a half, but at least 3 members of the Council present at the meeting voted for it in accordance with Clause 23 of the Order. Well, Council Member Dobronravin Nikolai Alexandrovich, your opinion. I have already given my opinion, and I have a positive opinion. Thank you. Council Member Lagutina Maria Lvovna, your opinion? I am for. I vote for. Council Member Kefele Igor Fedorovich, your opinion? Igor Fedorovich. Okay. I confirm my opinion given in my review. I'm for awarding the academic degree to Nikita Sergeevich. Thank you. Council member Nurtazina Rosa Altalipovna. Your opinion? I support awarding the degree of candidate of political science to Nikita Sergeevich Ivannikov. Thank you. And me, chairman of the council, Vasilieva Natalia Alexeyevna, also vote for awarding the degree to Nikita Sergeevich Ivannikov. Next, let me count the votes and announce the results. Dear colleagues and guests, let me announce that out of 5 members of the council members present, 5 voted for, voted against 0, abstained also 0. So the decision to award to Ivannikov Sergeevich the degree of candidate of political sciences, specialization 230004, political problems of international relations, global and regional development, has been made. Dear colleagues, since our meeting is being held in the remote access mode, do council members or the applicant and others present any questions, comments regarding the procedure of our meeting? I see there are no questions. Thank you. Now, let's proceed to the final stage of our session, the final closing remarks of the applicant. Please, Nikita Sergeevich, thank you. Dear Chairman, dear Council members, Zina Abzilimkhana, Ekaterina Vyacheslavna, first of all, I would like to thank you, as I have already mentioned, for your interest, for reading my thesis, for giving me valuable comments that will enable me to improve my work. It was a pleasure. I'm very pleased with your decision since I want to continue my research. I thank you for supporting my work. I'd like to thank Zina Abzilimkhanovna Bakhturidze for her patience, for her willingness to help and communication and support. Thank you very much, Zina Abzilimkhanovna. I'd like to thank, as Zina Abzilimkhanovna said, I wrote my thesis on the basis of High School of International Relations of Polytechnic University of Peter the Great. I'd like to thank the director of the high school, Sergei Nikolaevich Pogodin, who is not in touch with us for all the support he has given to me in the course of my work at the high school. And also I'd like to thank all my colleagues, my family, my friends who supported, somehow gave me opportunity to work, and for your positive evaluation of the results of my work. Thank you very much. In that case, we would like to congratulate you. You quite well managed to answer our comments, prepared for such an interesting, such a difficult procedure as an online defense. So we congratulate you, and we hope that your scientific results will have practical significance. I think that is very important, especially considering the subject of your research. If no one has any more questions, Nikita Sergeevich, I beg your pardon. I also wanted to give special thanks to St. Petersburg University and Dissertation Council Activity Support Department of St. Petersburg University for giving me the opportunity. Where scientific work, research continues regardless challenges presented by life. Thank you. Thank you. Igor Fedorovich, I wanted to use such reliable connection to say hello to Rosa Autalipovna. Please say hello for me to Yamolov, your colleague, who is a good friend of mine, and to all staff of the National University of Lev Nikolaevich Gumilov. That's all. I thank you for this opportunity to participate in this session. For me, this has great significance, giving a new experience. And my doctoral students, 3 doctoral students, they came to St. Petersburg University for internship. So we have good connections which are developing, and I think that Zainab Zilamkhanovna will continue. I hope so, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity to invite you in person. So maybe some master's programs. So there's a big field for cooperation. Yes. Okay, thank you. For and yeah, please stop online broadcasting.